Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. We're going to be starting in just a few minutes. Could everybody please check your cell phones and make sure they're on silent or turned off? Thank you very much.
Please remain standing for military honors.
In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we'll remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we'll remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we'll remember him. When we are weary in need of strength, we'll remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we'll remember him. As long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now a part of us, and we'll remember him.
All of us at once took it for granted that we would meet here today to say farewell to our beloved friend, Bernie Marcus. It's difficult to reconcile oneself to the thought that this noble man, a giant in our community, alas, in the world, is no more. He was such a part of our lives, all of our lives, a bulwark upon which this community rested, that it will truly require an effort of the mind to realize that he has left us for the land from which there is no returning. Nafla ateret roshenu, the crown of our head has fallen. Today we lament not only for his family, but for our entire community. We offer our condolences to Bernie's bride, Billy, to his sons, Frederick and Nancy, to Michael and Jerry, to Belinda, to Lydia and Alexandra, Jacqueline and Hannah, to Hannah, Sarah, Shira, and Joseph, to family and to friends and associates and philanthropists and business executives and nonprofit leaders, the Jewish community, friends of Israel, admirers, those who have gathered today from near and from far. As we look out into the throngs that have gathered at this temple, a most fitting place for this farewell, for Bernie was so very proud to be Jewish. We are reminded of the inscription on the tomb of Sir Christopher Wren, builder of the famous St. Paul's Cathedral. It reads, "If a monument is required, then look around." Indeed, we look around today and see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Bernie touched the hearts and souls of every single person here. There has never been, nor will there ever be, a soul as generous, compassionate, and kind as Bernie Marcus. And that's what I want to say today about Bernie. Of all the Jewish texts that come to mind, there is a simple statement from the sages that to me represents the sentiment that all of us feel. Chaval al devadin va'al mishtachin. Woe unto those who are lost and cannot be replaced. Bernie Marcus is irreplaceable. This noble man walked in light and dignity and grace, And wherever he went, a unique climate came into existence. Those of us who were privileged to come just a little bit closer knew we were in the presence of a vital personality. But we can't mistake his gentleness, his dignity, and his grace for weakness. Bernie was a man of courage and real inner strength. He looked for beauty that is often hidden from the superficial glance. There are those in this world who create beauty, but equally important are those who appreciate it. There would be no creation if there were no appreciators. Bernie was drawn by the beauty of the Spirit, the beauty of human dignity and human compassion. He lived out of great depth. He was one of those people who lived not to appropriate, not to dominate, not to amass. He loved to give. And his own deep satisfaction came from enriching in many ways, subtle and overt, the lives of those around him. He gave of his heart without any consciousness that he was giving, without any feeling that he deserved tribute for that which he did. His presence in a room brought to it a dimension and depth that words could never induce. The eloquence of his spirit was resonant and penetrated into our hearts. He was utterly selfless. Our friend was moved by consideration for other people. There are so many in this world that are prisoners of their own ego, never venturing forth beyond the periphery. But Bernie was a person who fulfilled his own personality through kindness and understanding extended to others. Kind as he was to so many, his greatest gift was to bring into this ruckus world, a world teeming with anxiety and apprehension, a sense of direction, a sense of those eternal values which endure amidst the flux and the change, a sense of beauty and dignity of the human spirit, even in moments of stress and upheaval. What I can say today about Bernie is that he was irreplaceable. First and foremost, irreplaceable to his beloved family. Billy, I have never seen two individuals more in love. All of us admire your relationship together, and I will never forget, as long as I live, Bernie telling me in front of thousands and thousands of people that the secret to married life is always take a bath with your spouse. Billy, he said it in front of thousands, so I know it's okay. Billy, Bernie will always be there with you in every fiber of your being. A love like yours can never die. To his children and to his grandchildren, who made him proud every single day, especially as you reached your wedding days, Bernie is irreplaceable. And he's irreplaceable because of his friendships. Everyone was his close friend, his favorite associate, his favorite rabbi. He literally collected rabbis. Everyone was a recipient of his love and his humility. We loved him because he was honest and good, giving and caring, irreplaceable because of his smile, a smile that could light up the entire room. You saw it on the picture just before the service, matched only by his warm hug and his deep laugh. Irreplaceable because of his values, the values of the Home Depot, taking care of its people, giving back to community, doing the right thing. They became his fundamental principles, the principles of the Marcus Foundation, of Bernie's unique brand of giving philanthropy. We at the Temple are truly grateful for all of Bernie's love and support over the years, allowing us to pilot new and visionary ideas for the Jewish community, just as so many of you have been able to do. He loved medical research in Israel, Jewish causes and veterans. The organizations that he started and supported, such as Route 1 and the Marcus Autism Center, the Marcus Stroke Center, the Israel Democracy Initiative, the Marcus National Blood Services Center, to name just a few, because the list goes on and on and on. They all meant the world to him, and each and every one of these agencies is changing the course of humankind. Irreplaceable because of his love for pastrami on rye with deli mustard and a plate of sour pickles on the side. Irreplaceable because of his love for whale sharks and Macallan 18 on the rocks, and being among the first to sign the Giving Pledge nationally and the Jewish Future Promise, and because of the thousands and thousands of jobs that he created and his genius ideas around the concept of customer service. And you may not know it, but Bernie literally invented the phrase and the concept DIY, do it yourself. Irreplaceable because of his Jewish soul. On so many occasions, Bernie shared with me his upbringing, born of Sarah and Joe, poor immigrants from Russia. He learned from his parents the importance of giving back, of supporting the community with tzedakah. He believed in synagogues and what the Jewish communities of North America and Israel brought to society. Irreplaceable because of the manner in which he mentored us all. I can't tell you the number of times, and I know that I'm not alone, I went to see Bernie with a burning challenge. He gave such thoughtful advice, helped me to solve my own issues, and reminded me always that there was a reason why I was chosen to lead. You too. I can't begin to put into words how grateful I am for his advice and life lessons. Bernie's life story is one of perseverance and innovation, entrepreneurial thinking and heartfelt generosity. From his beginnings that were humble at a walk-up apartment to the heights of his business success and philanthropy, his journey is a reminder that the impact one person can make on this world is truly extraordinary. Like Bernie, we all strive to dream big, to work hard, to give back to the community, a legacy that continues to inspire and uplift countless lives for generations still to come. Our lives have been forever changed because we had the privilege of knowing and loving Bernie, and we will miss him every day. Blessed then is this family for having such a caring husband and father and grandfather. Blessed this temple for having such a loyal and generous member. Blessed this rabbi for having such a caring friend. And blessed the Most High for giving us such a devoted child of God. Indeed, we are all blessed for the privilege of sharing in his life. But chaval al devadin, woe unto us, for our friend Bernie Marcus can never be replaced. Amen.
I'm Rabbi Alvin Sugarman. Thank you, Rabbi Berg, for such an incredible description, accurate verbal portrait, if you would, of our beloved Bernie Marcus. I searched my heart and mind what to say to you this moment about Bernie. He lived and breathed his Jewish faith. So I turned to all the text of Judaism that I could think of. And then two simple words that are found in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 2. They're two Hebrew words. Heve bracha. Heve bracha. Be thou a blessing. the words that God spoke to Abraham some 4,000 years ago. Bernie heard those same words. But not only did he hear those words, behind me in this ark, there are 3 scrolls in Hebrew. They're called Torahs. Each one contains the first 5 books of Moses, and of course, these 2 words I just shared with you. The Torah is a living compendium of how to live a life. Bernie took those words to heart. For him, they became so much more than words. The Torah, our tradition, constantly expresses the need for love. And it's been said, as it's been said, Billy, he loved you more than any words could ever say. When I was privileged to be part of your 50th wedding anniversary and blessed the 2 of you and saw the look of love between the 2 of you that electrified the whole room, that we all know is so real and so deep. And that love, as Rabbi Berg indicated, extended not only to you, but to all his family and friends, and to every life he touched. But the Torah also has a vision, and Bernie Marcus has a vision of what the world should really be. And he lived that vision. He was a visionary in the truest sense of the word. What he and Arthur Blank and Ken Langone created, the unbelievable lives that Home Depot has touched over the years, and the good fortunes of Home Depot have been passed to us through his generosity, which knew no bounds. And then the deeds of his life, the way he could look at you, stare you in the eyes, he could look at you and he could pierce to the very tissue of your soul to help you know and understand who and what you really are. And he was genuine, absolutely genuine. He did not hold back his opinions. Once we were in a rather heated discussion decades ago when I was in his office telling him how important it was for Israel to talk to Arafat. We can't make peace without talking to your enemy. And he looked at me with that unique finger of his, and he pointed at me and he said, "Rabbi," you can see him doing this, "there are evil people in this world." And Lord only knows. He showed us not what evil is, but what good it is. Every day of our existence, if we're fortunate, we will see a sunrise and a sunset. What we do between that sunrise and that sunset is what makes us who we are. Bernie's life, to me, was like a beautiful butterfly. Everywhere it goes, it brings its gentle beauty. It delights the heart. It delights the heart. And that's what it means to be a blessing to another human being. Heve biracha. Be thou a blessing. Bernie was blessed with 95 years of sunrises and sunsets. And when we leave this sanctuary, our hearts will be filled with grief and sadness and gratitude. But also, I want you to do something that will help make Bernie's existence endure, is the blessing as it was. We have heard this week of political news the word mandate. Bernie heard a mandate. He heard that in those two words, Hefe Beracha, be thou a blessing. I want myself and you and each one of us to hear those words, but not only hear those words, that wherever possible, let us be a blessing to every life we touch. And that way, indeed, Bernie Marcus's life will endure as the blessing he was. Amen.
As you can imagine, we received many letters of tribute and support. We're going to read one of those letters this afternoon from the office of Nasi HaMedina, from the office of the President of the State of Israel. Dearest Billy, I was deeply saddened to learn of the passing of your husband, the remarkable Bernie Marcus. Bernie was a visionary and a leader who exemplified Jewish pride, generosity, and compassion. His story was the embodiment of the American dream. By virtue of hard work, talent, and seemingly unending supply of grit and determination, Bernie created a business empire. However, beyond his world-class industriousness and business acumen, Bernie demonstrated an unbridled commitment to living a life of values and meaning. His generosity was legendary, and he donated to those causes and movements that he fully believed in. His staunch support of Israel and the Jewish people will live on for generations, as will his vital efforts to create a lively and vibrant discourse on democracy here in Israel. On a personal level, I will always remember his warmth, kindness, and intelligence. It was a privilege to converse with Bernie, and I always left our discussions both better informed and inspired. On behalf of the state and people of Israel, please accept my sincere condolences on the death of your husband. He will be profoundly missed by all who knew him. As we say in the Jewish tradition, may Bernie's memory be for a blessing. With all my sympathies, sincerely, Isaac Herzog, President, the State of Israel. Let us turn now to the words that have offered us comfort and support over the many, many hundreds of years, the words of the 23rd Psalm. Adonai ro'i lo echsar, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It is our special honor now, at this time, to invite Fred Marcus and Michael Morris to share some words of remembrance.
There was a reason that there was an honor guard for my father with the flag presented by Special Forces Captain Marcus Ruzek, who is at the Marcus Foundation that my father hired to do Veterans Affairs and Free Enterprise. And that's because my father served in the New Jersey Air National Guard for 5 years during the Korean War, although his unit was not called up. He was devoted to this country. An interesting story, Ted, is he also later served on the executives for a strong defense. And one day they went to a nuclear submarine, and he went down the nuclear submarine, went inside, and he saw the engineer. The engineer came running up to him and said, "Bernie," and gave him a big hug. He said, I'm sorry, but do I know you? He said, "I work for you." And it turned out that about a third of the staff of the nuclear submarine worked at Home Depot when they were in port. So it's very interesting how worlds can be integrated. And my father integrated worlds, which made it very difficult for me to try to organize a life that complex where this part connected to this part connected to this part. And I've always found, as Rabbi Berg mentioned and Rabbi Sugarman, that the best guide to organization usually is in the Torah, is in the Jewish tradition, is in the 4,000 years of thought and legacy that we have. The Baal HaTanya, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, spoke and said that one must live with the time. One must live particularly with the weekly Torah portion and the daily Torah portion. And it's not a mistake that he spoke these words 200 years ago on the Parsha, on the Torah portion of Lech Lecha, which is this week's Torah portion that introduces, to frame what Rabbi Sugarman just mentioned, our patriarch Abraham. And in Lech Lecha, Abraham is given his assignment and undertakes his mission in the world. It presents an archetype of moral rebirth through, and here's the organizing principle, I think, for my father's life, through the paradigmatic founder, which is our father Abraham. If there's one word that could describe my father's activity in the world and why all these things intersect, is that he was uniquely a founder. Therefore, I do not, believing in divine providence, I do not consider it a mistake that my father transitioned to the next world during the Parsha, the Torah portion, that introduces our patriarch, Abraham, the archetypical founder. In thinking more about what concept, it's interesting that Rabbi Berg actually initially started off with that concept, but I'm going to be echoing what the two rabbis said because I think what they said is true, and it is Torah-based. I think the concept that can best organize my father's life is the concept of keser, the concept of crown, as described in the Talmud in the Ethics of the Fathers by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who says there are 3 crowns: the crown of prophecy, the crown of priesthood, the crown of kingship, and one more that I'll talk about later. So the first crown, the crown of prophecy, is future-oriented. It is the crown of a visionary. And my father was certainly a visionary. He had an extraordinary ability to see beyond the present, not just to see beyond the present, but to make it happen in a way that really did seem prophetic. I know that the Israeli consul is here. And my father saw that Israel needed a national blood bank that would be impervious to missiles and bombs, that would be subterranean and be able to supply all the needs of Israel, military and civilian alike, Jew and Arab alike, during a time of conflict. And he inspired and gave a task to Mogen David Adom, the Red Star of David in Israel, analogous to our Red Cross, to build it and gave the lead gift. The Marcus National Blood Services Center did indeed open in Israel on its scheduled date, October 9th, 2023, 2 days after the attacks. And it has been processing up to 500,000 units of blood a day. People line up at the old facility around the block, 24 hours a day to give blood. It's brought to this subterranean processing center, processed, sent out all over Israel. That's Nevuah. That's prophecy. I'll give you another example, and Ted, you might be interested in this one, as I know that Arthur and Ken and Frank and Ron will be. In spring, I tried to place it. I believe it was spring 1977. My father visited a company in Germany. He was there to sell Home Depot stock called Hugo Mann, and had 500,000 square foot, essentially center. They sold everything from groceries to cars. And it crystallized thoughts that he had, the way that one drops a crystal into a supersaturated solution and it just forms, which is the way inspiration happened. It was very interesting for me to watch this happen. And with extraordinary clarity in this private conversation, he described to me in detail an idea he had. He and Arthur and Ron were already working at what was then the largest home improvement company in the United States, which was very, very small by comparison to Home Depot, which much smaller stores, of a stores that would have everything that they needed in their industry, that would have high volume, low margin, buy directly from the manufacturer, skilled salespeople, an entrepreneurial and common sense culture, and create a new do-it-yourself market that would include both homeowners and, at that point, small contractors. He had it worked out to the detail that years later, when Home Depot reached 1,000 stores, I said to him, "Dad, this is what you said would happen, and you said it would reach 1,000 stores." He said, "I never said that." He said, "I said it would reach 2,000 stores." As Ted can verify it, it's now 2,300. So he was pretty close. Better to err on that side than on this side, right? And they actualize the vision. Lots of people have visions, but in his case, he keeps having them, and he actualizes them. And as my daughter Shira would say, who does that? Well, the founder does that. He has the unusual, we talk about human beings being in the image of God. We usually talk about it having to do with the moral or having to do with the rational. My father had the unique capacity as a founder that to have that image in the Creator. God thought the world and it came into being. My father conceived things and they actually happened. And that brings me to the next crown, the crown of kingship, which is present-oriented as opposed to future-oriented. And a founder is essentially a problem solver. I'll give you what I think is an archetypical example from my father's life. He had an employee who had a profoundly developmentally disabled child. And she was Superwoman. I mean, when she was not working for him, she was flying Governor Joe Frank Harris around the state of Georgia in a helicopter. She went to doctor after doctor after doctor, therapist after therapist, and couldn't figure out what was going wrong and how to put it all together. He didn't know at this point that it was autism, but he knew there was a problem that needed to be solved, and opened up with 2 trailers, the Marcus Institute for Developmental Disabilities, because he didn't know it was autism, at Emory University, that today has grown into the Marcus Autism Center. The largest autism center, I believe, by a factor of 8 in the world. And that's not even counting its outreach. And the extraordinary thing, another thing a king does is a king hires extraordinary people. A really good king knows, my father said, I always surround myself with people who are smarter than I am. He said, I'm not that smart. There are lots of people who know how to do things that I don't know how to do. So he hired Ami Clint. And Ami now has a device that he developed with Warren Jones that can detect autism at the age of 6 weeks by eye movement. and it only gets more accurate the older that you get. He also knew that there needed to be an advocacy group because no one knew what autism was. So he found Bob and Suzanne Wright, and he started Autism Speaks. And when it started at the beginning of 2005, nobody knew what autism was because Bob Wright ran NBC Universal and had a Rolodex where he could pick up the phone as he did and call Jerry Seinfeld and say, Jerry, can you do a benefit for autism? And he did. Time magazine ran on it, Life magazine, New York Times, every media picked it up. Within a year, from nobody knowing about it, there was $1.5 billion authorized for autism research that nobody had known about before, and he had, just like with Home Depot, where he created something that didn't exist, he created indirectly, through Bob and Suzanne Wright, a knowledge and activity that didn't exist. And that brings me to the third, and you spoke about my father's great compassion and love. The third crown is the crown of priesthood. Priesthood has to do with the past. And in my father's case, it has to do with preserving what is best in the past. In my father's case, it was the lessons he learned from his parents, particularly from his mother. I'll give you a small example. One day, I was with him at Home Depot, and we went down, this is in the present store support center, and we went down to the employee cafeteria to eat lunch together, which he used to do frequently. And then we were coming back up in the elevator, one of the Home Depot employees got on the elevator, he had never met, they talked, and he asked her very, very real questions and paid very close attention to her answers. Like you said, Rabbi, there's nothing phony about this. He was really zeroed in on her. She was the only human being on earth at that moment. We got off the elevator, and it led to a discussion. And I said, Dad, let me ask you a question. What is the secret of your success? And I'll never forget his words. He said, never forget to be human. We will not have time at the service, but I'm sure at the Shiva, Michael and Billy and I and the family are going to hear, not just at Shiva, but for many, many years, stories of how my father helped people, directly and indirectly, publicly and privately, in ways that nobody would ever know, because that's the way that you really give tzedakah. That's the way you really give, is by doing it because it's the right thing. As his longtime associate and my friend Rick Slagle emphasized with me in a call after my father passed away, one of the extraordinary things about him is no matter what happened in his life, and Ken, you and Arthur and Ron, you saw him go through these up and downs, whether everything was falling apart or everything was going brilliantly or everything was falling apart again or everything was going brilliantly, he was always exactly the same person. He said he didn't believe his own press clippings. He said that's where you go wrong. The day you start believing your press clippings is the day you lose your way. He considered himself a human being like any other human being, and he had the kind of kingship that serves. That brings me to the final crown from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is Keser Elyon, the crown of transcendent purpose. My father knew what he was about. He wrote a book that was just published last year. He wrote it, Jay came up with the idea, and he spoke with Catherine Lewis, who helped write other books with other people for several years. He consolidated it all. It's called Kick Up Some Dust, and he left us his ethical will. He did it because people were coming to him who wanted to start philanthropies and didn't know how to do it. And it covered his life, covered Home Depot, covered what he did in philanthropy, because he was always teaching. And in it, he talks about the Jewish concept of Besher. And I know Dan Cathy is in here, and I don't know where but we spoke about this, that Besher is a kind of a destiny, but it's a participatory destiny. His mother told him, God helps those who help themselves. And he understood it the way that his very close friend and rabbi in Denver, my rabbi in Denver, Rabbi Shlomo Tursky, said that we have to do our part and God will respond with his part. Arthur, I don't know if you recall, I'm sure you do, a meeting, it was a manager's meeting in the late 1990s. I can't place it. I was there, and in my moral imagination, I imagine it in a great theater with balcony behind it. I know it's packed. For some reason, I think we had family there as well, but I'm not sure. And as often happened at the manager's meeting, at the very end of the meeting, you and he went up on stage and in a very informal way started talking back and forth. And you started reminiscing about how the company was formed and about all the things that went wrong, from when you couldn't find financing and Rip Fleming stepped in to all, I mean, it was an incredible series of challenges that you went through to get to this point. And I think you were both stunned by the fact that you had actually made it to this point. And the two of you, I remember the two of you looking, pausing, and in silence looking at each other, thinking, where do we go from here? And my father said, Arthur, there's no other explanation. It must have been the hand of Almighty God. The theater exploded into the loudest, longest ovation I have ever heard in my life. And I remember tears in your eyes, and I know there were tears in mine. That's Keser Elyon. That's the acknowledgement of a transcendent purpose and a transcendent providence, a good God who participates in all that you do. And think of all the good that's come just to the city of Atlanta through Home Depot. Besides 500,000 employees and countless small businesses and people improving their lives and vendors who created jobs, millions of people being affected. You just go down Peachtree and you have the Marcus Emergency Center and Stroke Center at Grady. You have the Arthur Blank Residences at Shepherd. You have coming up the Marcus Research Institute at Shepherd, the Share Military Program, Piedmont Hospital, the Marcus Tower, the Arthur Blank building at new hospital at Shoah. Go downtown and there's a Georgia Aquarium and there's Mercedes-Benz Stadium and the Falcons and the soccer team. It goes on and on. Imagine all of that. The only reason that could come about is by the hand of Almighty God and the participation with that hand. So in sum, my father, like our father Abraham, was a founder. It would take all day to speak of the things he invented, organized, executed, and sustained, which, by the way, these 4 steps that are classical management doctrine, he never learned in business school. They just came to him naturally the way that other people breathe. But in the end, his greatest accomplishment was character. According to the ancient dictum that in the end, it is all about character. This is what Shimon Bar Yochai called Keser Shem Tov, the crown of a good name, because character is the only thing that we take with us to the grave. We cannot be you, Dad. Like Abraham, you are sui generis. You are one of a kind. You are what the Torah calls an ish shalem, a complete man, a man in full. But we can pledge to preserve and enrich your legacy, and that is something all those your life has touched intend to do. I'd like to end with a final blessing, according to the teaching of our tradition, that the souls of the tzaddikim, the souls of the righteous, are actually more efficacious when they're released from this world than they are when they were in this world. Ben Sion, Ben Elimelech Yosef, Ben Sur Rivka, may you thrive in peace. We love you, Dad. God bless.
I have followed my father in speaking countless times, and let me tell you that was no easy task. This is significantly harder. My father was an extraordinary man who did extraordinary things in his life. I've read several times over the past days that he was considered a champion of champions. I would say that he was a leader amongst leaders. I want to tell you a short story. My father was in a roundtable meeting some 30 years ago. There were 30, maybe 40 extraordinarily distinguished CEOs, just like himself. I know that Don Keogh was there from Coca-Cola and Oz Nelson from UPS, and I know the CEO of SmithKline Beecham was there as well. As the meeting progressed, I was on the sides, and there was a constant murmur in the room as people were talking and presenting their case. People were talking around the room and mentioning things to each other, except during one instance. Every time Bernie Marcus spoke, the room became absolutely quiet. You could hear a pin drop. That was the admiration, command, and respect that my father had with business, civic, and political leaders here and around the globe. I also want to mention about the hundreds of thousands, and probably more like millions of people, that he directly helped, assisted, lifted up, inspired. When he left Home Depot, he had employed over 300,000 employees. He ensured they all had living wages. He had multiple stock option programs for every single employee to become part of so that they could build their retirements. And at Home Depot's core value of helping disaster victims, he helped countless millions of people around the world. And this was something that he personally instilled in every store manager. To the people's lives he has saved through advances in stroke care, trauma care, PTSD, early stage cancer detection, and more, state-of-the-art programs to help veterans, and especially wounded veterans, that really touched his heart. This passion, by the way, started almost 40 years ago at Shepherd University. From all of these, I have seen literally thousands of letters, thank you letters, sent to him. People's lives he dramatically changed. And this was a significant portion of who my father was. But my job today is to talk about his relationship with the family. First, I want to let you know that he doted on my mother. I know in his formative years, his mother, Sarah, was his role model and mentor. But years later, it was Billy Marcus that became his rock when he needed it, his voice of reason when he was out of control, and his partner in all things big and small. They took turns caring for each other through the years. They loved each other immensely and had the ultimate trust and respect for each other. They also played a lot of golf together. For 51 years, they stood as one. And I would say that my mother had the best years of her life with her best friend over those past 50 years. But his family was bigger than Billy. Most of them are here today. He had 2 older brothers, 1 older sister. His sister B was the sweetheart of his life. She kept the family together, but Bernie was the stalwart brother that helped fix all the problems. And let me tell you, those siblings had a lot of problems. Those 3 siblings, and I hope nobody corrects me on this one, those 3 siblings had 8 children. Those 8 children had 18 children, and I'm just going to say that those 18 children had 20 or more, and counting, children. Bernie adored and adopted all of his nieces and nephews, all of his grandnieces and nephews, all of his grand-nieces and nephews. It was the highlight of the year when we would all get together, and we would try and do that yearly, usually for some simcha. I remember specifically one year, about 6 to 9 months before the aquarium opened, he gave a hard hat tour to at least 60 of us. That truly meant the world to him, to have all of his family, or many or most of his family there with him, to see something that he was building that he was so proud of. And then there's my brother and I. We've heard from Fred, but for me, Bernie was my father, my mentor, my role model, and I'd have to say my lead investor. He was always there for me. He picked me up when I was down. He offered me the best advice when I had no idea what to do, which unfortunately was way too often. And he inspired me to be the person that I am today, to be the best that I could be, and to know when to follow and know when to lead. He gave me everything I needed to mature into the person I am today, and any success that I have can be traced right back to him. He inspired me as he has inspired countless number of people, including hundreds of you here today in this room, and I suspect that's why you're here. His leadership is demonstrated by the outpouring of support in this room, and also seen through the media coverage over the last 24 hours. And truly offering no political leanings here, you should all look up the 7-minute tribute that Neil Cavuto did. It was truly inspiring. And I knew it. I grew up with him, and it was inspiring. Business, civic, and political leaders around the globe have asked for his advice. Count him as a friend, and we'll miss him. As we just heard, that includes President Isaac Herzog. But none will miss him as much as my brother and I, the extended family here that I love very much, but clearly, not as much as my mother, who will have a hole in her heart for the rest of her life. God bless.
It is our special honor now to invite forward the governor of the state of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Berg. It is an honor for Marty and I to be here. I couldn't help but to chuckle when you both were giving great tributes, and Michael and Fred did as well, but I was chuckling when Rabbi Berg said that Bernie loved to give, and I thought to myself, he loved to give advice. It may just be me that he was giving it to, but I think maybe not. But Marty and I are just honored to be here to celebrate the life and impact of someone who is truly an American legend. Marty and I are also here on behalf of a grateful state and we were blessed to know Bernie and his family, and we were blessed to know a man of great vision, but also generosity. And like so many across our state, we have been touched and inspired by the values that he showed throughout his life. Values that defined Bernie, the Home Depot, and the Marcus Foundation philosophy. Taking care of your people, giving back to your community, and doing the right thing even when it's difficult. All of Georgia has benefited from that mindset that he brought to every interaction. Many centuries ago, Hebrew scholars first spoke of a concept that roughly translates to repairer of the world, a concept that endures today. A man of faith and family, of genuine kindness and character, and monumental philanthropy, and the co-founder of the world's largest home repair retailer. What better phrase could describe Bernie Marcus than a repairer of the world? Few men have had such a profound influence on their community and our state. His contributions will have multi-generational impact, and his name will live on through the many projects and gifts that he and Billy have given over the years. The investments that they've made in medical research and the healthcare network alone have not only saved lives, but ensured those lives are more fully lived. And school children from all over our state carry the memories of excitement and newfound knowledge that comes from a visit to the Georgia Aquarium, a gift and a state asset unlike any other, thanks to Bernie and Billy Marcus. That dedication to improving lives also filled Bernie's professional career since the Home Depot's founding, well over 4 decades ago. Whether it's directly through the hundreds of thousands of associates the company has employed, or through the considerable business undertakings achieved through his leadership, Bernie Marcus and the company he co-created literally helped build the incredible economy that has made Georgia the best state in which to do business and, in my opinion, the best place to call home. His is a uniquely American story, one that will continue to inspire us in future generations of Georgians. So to Billy, Fred, Michael, and the entire Marcus family, just let me say on behalf of all Georgians, thank you. Thank you for sharing your husband, your father, and your grandfather with us. Thank you for supporting his efforts to be a repairer of the world. Thank you for helping him realize those dreams that had made our state stronger and also more prosperous. And thank you for carrying those dreams forward in his spirit. Please know that Marty and the girls and I will continue to keep you all in our prayers in the weeks ahead. And we will continue to thank God for the gift that was Bernie Marcus. For all of us here today and those across our state, may his memory continue to be a blessing.
It is our honor now to invite to the bema, to the pulpit, Arthur Blank and Ken Langone.
Good afternoon, friends. I want to start by saying how deeply honored I am to stand here today and have an opportunity to speak with you and share some thoughts with you about my friend and brother, Bernie Marcus. Anybody in this sanctuary, I understand fully, I represent each one of you, and your stories and your life is connected to Bernie. I'm also incredibly grateful for the beautiful words that have been shared. Freddie, thank you so much, and Michael, thank you so much. Freddie, Michael, Billy, I love you all very, very much. And Suzanne's spirit is here with us today. And I know that as we celebrate her father's remarkable life, Susan is in our presence and celebrates her father as well. And Kenny, many of my memories of Bernie include you, and it's an honor to be here with you today. And I'm anxious to look forward to hearing from you shortly. The loss we are feeling is something that we cannot measure, and that speaks to the legacy and love that Bernie leaves behind. Bernie and I shared a relationship that spanned almost 60 years, well before and well after the birth of the Home Depot. It's difficult to put 60 words of beautiful memories into words, some of the most impactful memories of my life. For more than half a century, he and Billy were like second family to me and are like second family to me. Bernie was a father figure, another brother to me, a mentor to me, and in my eyes, he was a true hero in every sense of the word. I was blessed to have spent some time with Bernie just over a week ago. We both sort of knew that this may be the last time we would be together on this earth. Billy joined us for a short while during our visit. After Billy left, Bernie turned and looked at me deeply into my eyes the way I think Freddie, you described, or Michael, you have described as well, and said to me, and we locked 60 years of life together, looking at each other, and he said, "You know, I'm dying." I shared with him at that time that my belief is while his physical being would leave us eventually, his magnificent presence would be with us forever. And this is because he lived a life with a giving, serving spirit and a selfless soul that will always be reflected in the millions of lives he touched in more ways than any of us can fully comprehend or imagine. His impact through Home Depot customers, our associates, our shareholders, and philanthropy goes beyond his physical being and will live on forever. While Bernie had his personal passions and beliefs and views, his heart and commitment to helping others was grounded in his devotion to bettering humanity. He was a man for all, ALL, and believed in the basics of working hard, being a good person, and helping those around him to achieve levels of success, joy, love, and peace in their lives. Bernie and I had many points of personal connection. We were both first-generation Jewish sons of Eastern European immigrant parents. We both had very strong mothers that we were close to. However, Bernie, our friendship and our love was not based on being the same. It stood on respect and love, trust, and the understanding we both wanted the best for the world around us and for each other. No matter how different we viewed a particular scenario, he respected my point of view and I respected his. And we never let those differences get in the way of our love for each other, ever. One of the key values of Home Depot, that Home Depot is built upon and all of our family of businesses currently, is listen and respond. It was signified by this dynamic between Bernie and myself. We were great listeners of each other with shared respect, something that we all pray the United States can get better at in today's political and social climate. I met Bernie 10 years after my father died. I was 25 years old. I lost my dad when I was 15. He was 44. For the very first time Bernie and I met, I knew he was someone who would inspire me, challenge me, and push me to think bigger and be the best that I could be. I also came to know that our mutual respect would make our bond forever strong. Through every chapter of my life, Bernie was there, at my highest highs, to my lowest lows, and every moment in between, much like Michael described. He was a constant anchor for me, a source of wisdom, support, somebody I could always rely on. Bernie knew my mother and brother well as my wives and my children, 3 of them, 6 of them, 6 grandchildren. Bernie knew them all, much like the family that Michael described. Some of my children and one of my wives is here today. And they would have to have a separate cheering section over here. And he really helped me navigate every stage of life's journey, and especially as a father, as I was a father. Bernie was a life and business partner to not only me, but to many that are here and well beyond this room. He was also a part-time doctor as well, always concerned about my and everybody else's health and well-being, always offering his pharmaceutical and doctoral knowledge when he thought he could help. And he viewed himself as a sort of medical doctor. I know countless people could share in my selfless experiences with Bernie in that regard. And many times, much as others have described, he was my rabbinic counselor in respect to Rabbi Sugarman and Rabbi Berg, but he considered that an important part of his life role, providing me with invaluable knowledge and counsel on a variety of life's journeys. So, Governor Kemp, you were not alone in that regard. Trust me. His dedication to his faith was extraordinary, admirable. Bernie always stood strong in what he believed in. Many people sought him out for advice, and I know he felt honored to be a source of wisdom to countless people. He made me better, a better businessman, a better person, and a better friend. And I hope and I pray in some small ways I was able to do the same for Bernie. He was, without a question, a brilliant businessman and one of the most visionary humans I've ever known. He lived in the present, but also spotted opportunities not only around the corner, as Freddie described, but around the block, around the neighborhood, around the city, around the nation, and often around the world with great clarity. He could be tough when he needed to be, but that tough exterior was paired with a heart bigger than anyone could have imagined. No one cared more deeply than Bernie when it came to our relationships with our Home Depot customers, our associates, our suppliers, and our shareholders. It was an honor to work alongside Bernie, Ken, Frank Blake, Greg Manier, Ted Decker, all here today, who have helped convert shareholders, not for things they could acquire, but help enable shareholders inside of our company and worldwide with a value of $400 billion today to make their urgent needs, their life needs, and their dreams, their family dreams for themselves and for their families and for things that they care deeply about, make all of that a reality. We would get thousands and thousands of letters from shareholders that still flood the offices of the Home Depot. He was always truly invested in shared success and turning that success into more opportunities for more people. He had an urgency about that. He was always the fastest walker on the floors of many of our stores, and that was true on the golf course when I played with him, at least Billy. I'm not sure with you, but with me, I hardly could keep up with him. But that fast pace was his pace of life, and the commitment stayed with him, if not physically, and mentally, until the very end. Bernie was a dedicated political force. To me, Republican, Democrat, political party labels are down here amongst all of us. Bernie existed on a much higher plane. Stand on the Bema today. Above me is the Ark that both rabbis alluded to earlier. And above the Ark is the eternal light. Bernie lives in that eternal light above all of this. He was not a mega donor, despite the media labeling him as such. He was much bigger than that. Much bigger than that. He was a mega humanitarian. Bernie is the true textbook definition of a humanitarian. With over billions of dollars and countless hours in giving, Bernie and Billy's heart for our city and our state and humanity across the globe has been unmistakable and unshakable. A few examples that highlight this giving, many of which have been mentioned earlier, but they're not tied to either red or blue, they're tied to H for humanitarianism, include the Georgia Aquarium, largest in the world, Shepherd Center, Billy Marcus Building, Marcus Center for Advanced Rehab, Avalon Action Alliance, treatments and support for veterans and first responders, TBI, PTSD, substance abuse, Grady Hospital, Marcus Stroke and Neuroscience, and Marcus Trauma and Emergency Center, Marcus Autism Center inside the Children's Hospital today, Jewish causes around the world, and CDC through the Emergency Response Center. None of the above bear any party label. None of his patients, brilliant care providers, none of the visitors, none of what Bernie supported or cared for were party labeled. They were labeled for Bernie as humanity, period, full stop. Our support for one another extended far past Home Depot, and our foundations partnered together and still do today deeply. Avalon Children's Hospital, Shepherd Center, Grady, and much more. And we've always partnered together based on our shared personal values, which in many cases came as a result of our parents, and particularly, I would say, in both cases, our mothers. Bernie cared deeply about medical advancements, patient care, veteran population, international causes, his beloved Israel, and always prayed for peace in the Middle East. These passions stem from his selfless desire to create change that would leave an impact on this world, and he certainly did. His legacy of leadership and charity will continue to have a massive impact on this world for generations to come. He was an innovator, a man who never settled for standing still, who constantly looked for ways to improve, to help create. Most importantly, and more than anything else, Bernie's devotion to his family was a constant inspiration. I will never forget the smile on his face when we talk about Billy and their children and their grandchildren, and to see how he cherished and protected those he loved, how he put them first always, was something to admire. And he would reach back with even his first marriage to Ruth and care for her and care for interests that were connected to her. As a couple, Bernie and Billy were a force, and I'm honored to have witnessed their beautiful, unwavering love. They walked through life hand in hand, figuratively and literally, through shared passion for golf, for giving, and for family. And Billy, one thing that probably doesn't surprise you, he would share with me stories about your beloved baths together. And at times go into a little further detail. But so I just kind of wonder, you know, and you may wonder, how many other thousands of people heard those incredible stories. And Bernie was one of the great storytellers of all time, and I was one of the great audiences of all time for his jokes and stories and whatever, and I've heard every story hundreds of times, and every time I would laugh at each one, and I would, truly deep belly laughs. Bernie's mind was sharp, his heart was huge, and his spirit was unwavering in everything he did. And during our last moments together, unsolicited, he offered me counsel on our Atlanta Falcons. He always gave me great advice about our team, whether I solicited or not, and he was usually right. And you should know that, you know, a short while ago, less than 2 weeks ago, he was very complimentary about your team, but he reminded me that we had a lot of games left to play. We may have opened the first 1,000 stores, but we had 1,300 version of that to go, and I said I totally understand that. Finally, as he tired and I got ready to leave, I asked, and no reason to ask because I knew what was coming, what life wisdom he would have for me. And it reminded me to stay active, both physically and mentally. So Bernie, message received, and each day I do my best to do just that in every way that I can. So I'm still listening and hearing Bernie in every part of my body. That is Bernie personified, using our last moments to give me the gift of his helpful wisdom, his love, as he always did. While the success of the Home Depot steals is surreal to many of us, there's the simple moments with Bernie that I carry deep, deep in my heart. In the early days, driving around, visiting Home Depot stores, we'd look at each other in awe, tap each other with our elbows, say, "Can you believe what's happening?" We had lunch together almost every day for 8 years. Not only would he order the pastrami, set it with the pickles, but usually would take a second or third tub of pickles. Occasionally I'd order the same thing. Occasionally I'd order a grilled bratwurst, and I'd say, "That looks good, I'm going to order that the next day." But we knew what each we were going to have for lunch for 8 years together, virtually every day. It's so simple memories, those lunches and lessons, which are precious to me personally. I remember those beautiful days like they were yesterday, truly, and I'll remember them every day forward. It's impossible to measure the impact that Bernie had on my life. I could stay here, stand here, and talk about him all day, as many of you could, and most of you could. And I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, and I know that Kenny is anxious to share his thoughts, and will be up here in a moment. But he touched so many people, and this love and gratitude everyone has for him speaks volumes about who he was as a person. I personally will miss him more than the words can ever express, but I take comfort in knowing his legacy is strong and will live on. It will continue in everything he built, in the lives he touched, in the family he adored. I would say in closing, it's the kind of thing that Bernie would want me to say. His physical body is irreplaceable. But just as you see this eternal light shining above, he would say to me, to everybody connected in his circle of love, that we now have a responsibility, a serious responsibility. The best way to honor Bernie is by living a life that emulates, respects, salutes the best of who he is, not was, but is, and the best of who we are. May you rest in peace. I know you will. You deserve it. It's a mensch. In some ways, I'd say I cannot imagine a world without you, but I actually imagine a world without Bernie physically, but with his inspiration and his leadership and his role modeling and his example setting will actually live on and continue to multiply over tens and tens of years to come and continue to impact millions of people, people that we will never know personally, but they will all know of Bernie Marcus and how Bernie touched each of their lives. The scripture that you've heard many times today, I'll close with, is that defines you and your life's impact, is that life, his life, 95 rich, magnificent years, has been for a blessing and will continue to be for a blessing because of his values, his principles, and his ask of us to continue to be the best who we are and the best of who he is and was as we continue to face the challenge and opportunities in life. God bless you, my dearest Bernie, and thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, here goes. Rabbi, before I start, when Cardinal Dolan asked me to take on the responsibility of raising the money to restore St. Patrick's Cathedral, I told him I couldn't do it because there was a demon in my body, and every once in a while a bad word pops out of my mouth. And he said, well, what do we do? And I said, well, is there something like advanced absolution? He said, I guess so. So he went like that, and he says, you got it. I said, okay, let's go. I hope you got something like that for me here. So you're all warned, okay? I thought I'd spend some time talking about how I met Bernie and how we got things started. I had a client in Philadelphia who was running, back then, by the way, the home center industry was fragmented by geography. So you had West Lumber here, and you had Lowe's in the mid-Atlantic states, and Heckinger's around Washington, and so forth. And they used to meet annually at the Home and Hardware Show in Chicago. Well, this client of mine, Gary Earlbaum, who's, by the way, he and I talk every single morning at 6 o'clock. He can't sleep and I can't sleep, and we call and just back and forth for 5 minutes. Anyway, he was having trouble, and I said, Gary, look, who's out there that runs a great business that you have, that really knows what's going on and how to do it? Oh, he says, there's a guy in California by the name of Bernie Marcus. And I said, what company does he run? He says, Handy Dan Home Improvement Centers. I said, they're bankrupt. He said, no. I said, yeah, they're bankrupt. So I left his office in Philadelphia about 4 o'clock, took the train to New York, and instead of going out to Long Island, I went up to my office where we had these old Moody's manuals. And I go into the manuals, and I'm looking at Handy Dan's numbers, and I'm saying, my God, something's wrong. The stock is selling for $3 a share, and it's making $1.50 a share. So the stocks don't sell for 2 times earnings. Must be some accounting gimmicks or something in there. So I called Gary about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I said, Gary, do me a favor. Reach out to this guy and see if he'll see me sometime. So Gary said, okay. He called me back in 5 minutes, and he said, Bernie's in his office. He's waiting for your call. So I call him up, and I said, Mr. Marcus, I'm looking at your numbers here, and I'm challenging him about a non-recurring thing. I won't go through all the accounting details. But in any event, there were earnings coming out of the operations of the business, which is the best earnings of all. I said, I'd like to come and see you. He said to me, yeah, when you're out here sometime, give me a call. I said, how about tomorrow for lunch? He said, what do you mean? I said, I'll take the first plane out in the morning, and where do you want to meet? He said, well, I'm not sure if it was City of Industry or City of Commerce. He told me about a diner that we'd meet at. I took the first flight out of Kennedy and flew to LA. And I got to this diner that had plastic, fake plastic seats and chrome all over, and a guy with a greasy apron on and a sailor's hat on. And I sat there, and all of a sudden, I see these 2 gentlemen coming in dressed in business suits. And I figured, that's Bernie, but who the hell's the other guy? So I get up, I go to get up, and I find something hanging. This is where I might use a bad word, okay? And I get up, there's a wad of bubble gum that big. And I put my butt right on it. So my first thought was, my mother, God bless my mother, it's good luck. It's what the Jews say, b'shert. So he comes in, ever the gentleman, and he's got this other gentleman with him. And I grill him, and I'm talking for about an hour and a half, and I'm going to go right back to New York. And we get all done, and I said, Mr. Marcus, I want to tell you something. Mortgage your wife, mortgage your house, mortgage your kids, mortgage everything you got, and you go out and buy your stock, because when I get done with the stock, it's not going to be selling for $3 a share. And I found out the guy who he came with was his lawyer, Irwin Diller, and he was worried that he might say something to me in violation of the securities laws. When I left, and by the way, I got a letter after I wrote my book, Irwin Diller wrote me a letter attesting to all of this, and it was a nice letter. And Irwin said to him, you can trust this guy. So I proceeded to start buying the stock, and there was only 350,000 shares in the hands of the public. When I got all done, there was 1 block left of 50,000 shares. And it was owned by an order of redemptorist priest in Brooklyn. And the guy that ran it was Father Ray McCarthy, and I called him up, because that was the last stock, and we would have had it all in my group of investors and myself. And I called him up, and I said, Father McCarthy, I told him who I was, and he said, he was smiling, Langone, is that an Italian name? Be Italian? Yes, sir. He says, you're Roman Catholic? I said, I certainly am. He says, under the pain of hell, tell me what to do. I said, keep the stock, Father. One guy I don't want against me is God, so I mean, I'll take on anybody. So anyway, now I own all this stock, and I decided I got to get to know this guy. And if I were to say a nice thing today at this memorial for Bernie about Sandy Sigaloff, Bernie will do everything he can to keep me out of heaven. So this is a tough guy, a bad guy. And by the way, an aside, the whole idea of how Bernie treated people in the Home Depot was the exact opposite of what Sandy Sigaloff did to people that worked for him. Bernie saw the other side of a mean-spirited, cruel, evil, indifferent manager or boss. And that was a truly seminal moment in Bernie's thinking about how we treat our people. So anyway, now I got all this stock, and I go see Sigaloff. He doesn't like me. I don't like him. But we have to suffer each other, and I remind him that, I'm not going to be unreasonable, but if he does anything nuts, that I might have to go to court and settle this thing. He didn't like it. And he made a pass to try and buy me out. So I had a company in San Diego that I sold to Eli Lilly. And after the closing, it was November 30th, 1977, Elaine and I went out for the closing, and we drove up to LA, and Bernie invited me to have dinner with he and Billy and Michael in their home in Encino. And Billy, you made a hell of a Chinese meal that night. That was good stuff. And after dinner, Bernie said to me, come on to the living room, I want to talk to you. So Elaine and Billy were cleaning the kitchen up, and he said, please, you got to sell this guy your stock. Who? He said, Sigaloff. I said, I'm not going to sell him my stock. I said, if I sell him my stock, you're a dead man walking. He said, what are you talking about? I said, Bernie, the only thing of any consequence in that mess he's got up there is Handy Dan, and he can't take credit for it because you're here. I said, he's going to kill you. No, he needs me. He doesn't know anything about the business. I said, Bernie, I promise you, you're going to be a dead man walking. So we go to his living room, and then he takes me to the bedroom, and he calls up Sigaloff's lawyer, Ed Kaufman of Irell and Manella. And he said, I got Langone here in my house, and I got him persuaded to sell the stock. And I hear on the phone, I'm cleaning it up. I hear on the phone, how much does the SOB want? The stock was selling for about $16, $17 a share. And I think, what the hell, let's go for the moon. $25.50 a share. So he said, Bernie, I'll call you right back. 5 minutes later, he calls back. He said, tell that SOB to be in my office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Irell and Manella's offices were on the Avenue of the Stars. Elaine and I were staying at the Century Plaza up the street. Bernie picked me up where we were staying to drive me down to Irell and Manella to sign all the papers. We get out of the car, and I look across the roof of the car. I said, Bernie, I'm going upstairs and I'm signing your death warrant. You're a dead man walking. He said, you're wrong. He needs me. Bernie, please, I have no trouble reneging. Call him up, tell him I changed my mind. I'm telling you, Bernie, this is not going to have a happy ending. No, I said, okay. So we go upstairs, we sign the papers. 4 months later, on a Saturday afternoon, I've been traveling all week. I get home, and my son Bruce said, some guy from California's been calling you every half hour wanting to know where you are. I said, Mr. Marcus? He said, yeah. So I pick up the phone. It's about 4 o'clock, Saturday afternoon. You got fired. Is it in the papers already? I said, no. I said, why'd you call me all day long? He fired me, he fired Arthur, he fired Ron. I said, well, I warned you. So he said to me, I don't know what to do. I said, I know what you do. Get yourself, what did you guys do to get fired? He said, well, supposedly we violated some labor laws. I said, well, do me a favor. I said, can you get to New York tonight and meet me tomorrow morning for breakfast in Waldorf Astoria? He said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, I'll see you I go to Mass. I'll see you at 9:30, and we'll have breakfast and find out what we can do. Now, let me digress. After I bought all this stock, I used to go to store openings with Bernie when they opened the store, and one opening, it was a well-run company. And I would get excited about seeing what I saw. And we were walking through a new store. I'm not sure if it was Dallas or Houston. And I got so excited, and he grabbed me and he says, Kenny, he said, don't get too excited. He said, there's a concept out there that if somebody does it in this business, it's going to wipe out the whole industry. Tell me. No, I can't. He said, it's so powerful, I don't want anybody to know it. I said, okay. Now, so back to that Saturday afternoon. So Sunday morning, I come into Manhattan, and he brought with him, some of you probably know Jerry Glassman. I don't know if Jerry's here today. Oh, yeah. Remember? So he brought Jerry Glassman to breakfast. And me cutting to the quick, I said, who are you? He said, I'm Jerry Glassman. He said, what do you do? I'm a labor lawyer. I said, well, is he going to go to jail? And Bernie said, jail, what? I said, yeah. I said, you can't run a company from jail. He said, what are you talking about? I said, Bernie, remember what you told me? There's this concept out there that if somebody does it, I said, we're going to do it. And he looked at me. And I said, Bernie, you can't run a company from jail. That's why I wanted to know if you were going to go to jail. And that was it. And now we come up to where I am. Oh, there was one more great meeting we had. We got invited. One of the Rothschilds had bought a lot of the home. By the way, in a moment of bragging, Home Depot went public in September of '81. I had this computed as of last night. If you owned Home Depot from the day we went public until last night, you ready? You would have compounded your money at 29% a year, counting dividends. It's the best performing stock in the S&P from the time we went public. Okay? Anyway, so we get the Rothschilds bought a lot of stock, and we get invited to go to Zurich, where the muckety mucks were, the Bacchus, a whole bunch of 12 of them in a room. And magnificent setting. There's 7 wine glasses, the small ones to the big ones. And in back of each seat, there's a footman. And they serve this wine for appetizers, and they announced the year. They served, for lunch, they served Chateau Lafite, 1935, and it was my birthday, that's why they. So I noticed they served Bernie the red wine, he's not drinking it. So I dropped my napkin intentionally on the floor, and I go down to get it, and I said, Bernie, drink the wine. He drops his napkin and says, I don't like red wine. These guys are in the back of wondering what the hell's going on. I mean, so I'm getting close now. This is where I am. So I said, drink the blanking wine. That's the relationship he and I had. It was absolutely. I spoke to him Monday night. It was the last time we talked. Thank God for Hong. Hong, I want to tell you something. You're a wonderful human being. And the kindness you showed to Bernie and to Billy, I know the family feels the way I do. It was wonderful. Anyway, and we reached the point where I'd call him every day, and Hong would tell him what I said. And the last thing I said was, we were talking about the election, and I said, well, tomorrow's going to be a big day, boss. And I said, Bernie, I love you. And he says, through Hong, Kenny, I love you. Now, I know what happened after that call. He called up God, and he said, God, I got to talk to you in person. I'm telling you, this is the way it happened. So God said, okay, if that's what it is. By the way, Norman Lear had a wonderful expression. He said, I don't mind going, I just don't like leaving. And that was Bernie. But anyway, so I'm sure he got up there with God, and Bernie could sell anybody anything. And I'm sure by the time the polls opened the next morning, God was on the right side of the issue for Bernie and for me. So you see, Governor, we need the good Lord every once in a while. I can go on and on and on about Bernie and me. I'll just tell you one thing. He had a sense of empathy for the little people, like nothing I've ever seen. The most important, he used to go, I used to love to go to the stores with him because he would encourage the kids to call. By the way, Home Depot never had a headquarters. We always had a store support center. The idea being that the people that worked in that building were there to support the stores. That's what it was all about. They're all nodding their heads because they know that's the name of the game. Ted, by the way, you guys, Ted, Craig, Frank, you gave Bernie the greatest joy in his life by how well you fellas have led that company and how well that company has done. Don't ever forget that. So anyway, he had a notion that the company, forget about most organizations, the triangular, the point, the top guy's here, and the little people are down here. The whole idea of the Home Depot was flip the triangle upside down so that the base is on top, and that's where all the people are. That's the people that touch base with the customers. That's the place where the customer has an experience that will either come back or not. Bernie used to tell kids that would push carts in from the lot, you're the most important guy in the company because you're the last guy the customer's going to see before they drive away. So you got to make sure you got a smile and you help them whatever they're doing. This was how he thought. And more importantly, that's how he acted. And he and I, we just had this fabulous, fun relationship. Tuesday night, I got a call from a young man who was literally raised at our house. He had 5 brothers, terrible personal home situation. And the kids spent a lot of time with our kids. He didn't go to college. I got him a job at Depot. He became a store manager one day. He called me from he's retired to Idaho. And he called me to tell me that his life was made whole by being at Home Depot. He said, you know, when we had those Sunday night, we used to have Sunday night meetings once a month for the stores, and we had TVs. He said, after those meetings, after having Bernie and Arthur up there, we were so motivated, we were so empowered, we were so enthusiastic. The inspiration we got, that was his genius. That was his genius. Bernie was authentic. What he was, you saw. And when you talk about giving advice, yes, Bernie gave out free advice to anybody who sought or didn't want it, okay? He was equally, but one of the things that a couple of times today I've heard is, how do we honor Bernie? We're all going to leave here and we're all going to hear some wonderful words about a wonderful man. How do we honor him? It's pretty simple. How we live the rest of our lives. Do we take from his life an example that we carry out and on? It's ironic. It's scary. Every morning I read the Bible, and I have a Bible study guide called The Upper Room. And this morning in the upper room, the theme was, believe it or not, humility. Bernie had the great capacity to laugh at himself. That's precious. Bernie understood, don't believe your own press. These are the things that I believe you derive from a life well led. And Bernie's not going to die. There's at least some of us, maybe, I hope I'm one, there's at least some of us in this room that would want to get a little short with somebody less significant than us. We'll stop for a minute and say, Bernie wouldn't do that. I used to take Bernie to play golf with me at Seminole. I'm a member at Seminole. Bernie used to treat the caddy like he was Bernie's host, and he treated me like the caddy. But that's okay. Bernie had a capacity to lift up the little people, the people that struggle every day to make ends meet, the people that may have a kid with autism or cancer, the person that's got personal problems beyond imagination or belief. That's Bernie. All the other stuff, all of the buildings and all of the charities and everything else, at the base of it, at the very base of it, is Bernie relating write very often. This letter he wrote me described the friendship and the relationship that he and I, we would quote to him, we were brothers from different mothers. And ironically, both of us say the biggest influence in our lives was our mothers. That's true. So this is a fitful send-off for my friend Bernie. He's at peace now. I'm sure he's got a couple of deals going up there with, I'm certainly forgot, I know for sure he's been to a couple of parties since Tuesday, because that speaks for itself. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I speak for Elaine and myself. We love you, Billy. You know that. We've had a lot of wonderful times together. I promise you, every time I hug Billy, I usually bend her glasses, so I promise you, Billy, I won't bend your glasses, okay? But thank you all, and God bless Bernie, and God bless America. And let's just think every once in a while, what would Bernie do? Thank you very much.
Our final speaker this afternoon, and then it will be Hanukkah, will be Rabbi Albi Slamovitz.
Thank you, Rabbi. I got the message. My name is Rabbi Albi Slamovitz. I'm Bernie's nephew, and I just want to tell a few stories here, and I will, well, let's start with the aquarium. One of the greatest successes which Billy and Bernie built was the aquarium. And by the way, most of what I'm sharing with you are Marcus stories, just from inside the family. He once told the family that one of the highlights he enjoyed the most was walking out of his office and watching the children and adults stand in front of the gigantic glass area. I think it's in the Ocean Voyager. And just watch them being amazed at all the fish and everything going around. He very much enjoyed their sense of discovery, amazement, and pure joy as they encountered these wonderful creatures up close. If you get to the second-story level in the aquarium, right at the top of the escalator, you will see two sculptures representing Bernie and Billy. Every person's smile from the aquarium is a tribute to them. Michael mentioned this already, but I want to continue to mention it, that Bernie was truly the patriarch of the family. Even though he was the youngest sibling, Bernie soon became the patriarch of the Marcus extended family. At family barn bat mitzvahs, weddings, Passover seders, Bernie and Billy's presence was highly anticipated. As his fame grew around the world, his spending time with his siblings, Irving, his oldest brother, Seymour, then B, their spouses, and extended families, was greatly appreciated. My late father-in-law, Irving, took great pleasure in going to his local Home Depot in Boca Raton and telling the store associates that he was related to Bernie. I think he was looking for the Marcus discount, but that was not to be. That was not to be. Bernie's other brother, Seymour, lived in Toronto and took great pride in his kid brother and his role in Home Depot. Bernie's sister, B, held a special place in his heart. He often referred to her as a second mother. Quick story for Billy. I had the opportunity as a rabbi to often be invited to occasions where Bernie had donated money. And I would say one of the prayers, and then people would normally get up and talk about Bernie, the foundation, and the money that they had received before he got up. Almost inevitably, when it was Bernie's time to speak, he would say one thing. He would say, "This is not from me, this is from Billy and myself." He wanted to make sure that everyone understood that he was not working alone. He had a partner with him at all times. So very much indeed, his soulmate, his life partner, was something that he mentioned to everybody. And as Michael mentioned, as time went on and his siblings passed away, a second and third generation of Marcus children began to look to Bernie for guidance and his blessings. Weddings, life emergencies, employment, family issues were often resolved with one sentence: we need to talk to Bernie. For so many of us, family and friends alike, he was our emotional and generational foundation. We knew that he would guide us through whatever our issues were. His passing has left a void in our lives that may be impossible to fill. He will be greatly, greatly missed. In addition to our Marcus family, there was a second family that Bernie was a part of, his family at the Marcus Foundation. Led by Jay Kamen and his devoted staff, they work with Bernie on a daily basis, putting into action his visions to make the world a better place. They were very much his family. They spent much time with Bernie and cared for him as a beloved family member. Thank you all for your support, dedication, and care for Bernie and Billy and the entire families. I have two stories I'd like to tell, then something I'd like to share with you. You'll tell me what you think. Last June, Bernie and Billy celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary at a gala evening at the Georgia Aquarium. The main ballroom was decorated with beautiful flower arrangements, tributes were given, and a video highlighting their relationship was shown. My son and daughter-in-law, who work for Home Depot in Cedartown, went up to Bernie and Billy from a slight distance. They were asking people, if you remember, if you were there, to kind of keep your distance because nobody wanted to catch a germ. So they were leaving a little bit early. They spoke to Bernie and Billy at a distance, offered their congratulations, and apologized for having to leave the celebration early. They explained that they had to drive home and get up early as they went to work at 5 a.m. Now, what would most people at that point have said? Thank you for coming, drive safely, not Bernie. Bernie's response was so classic Bernie. With a smile on his face and a twinkle in his deep blue eyes, he said to them, "Thank you, now get to work." Work was in Bernie's DNA, as people have mentioned. Work for him never stopped. I had a chance to converse with him a few weeks ago. His voice was a bit softer than normal, but unbelievably, he was still working. making decisions about the foundation and thinking about future needs. As I began our conversation, I asked him how he was doing. Now, at that point, most 95-year-olds would have spoken about their physical needs, their emotional needs, not Bernie. And here's a direct quote, and I wrote it down just to make sure I got it exactly right. So when I asked him how things were going a few weeks ago, he said to me, "Hi, Albie, I'm still working hard, doing good things, trying to change the world." How many 95-year-olds do you know with that attitude? I've been struggling with what a number of people alluded to, and Arthur, where's Arthur? The eternal light is a beautiful image. How do we keep Bernie's eternal light going? And I had an idea. In his days as CEO of Home Depot, he would share stories of its visits to various stores. He loved to put on his orange Home Depot apron and walk around talking to customers and associates alike. He always remarked that for him, being present and walking through the aisles gave him the best picture of how a store was doing. "Bernie, the time has come to untie the apron and put it down. I believe that the people who now wear the apron who welcomed us on our way in." Okay, so here's my idea. I asked my son and daughter-in-law to bring their aprons, their actual aprons, with them. And I have an idea. You can tell me if it's a good one or bad one. I see this is tied up for me here very nicely. What I want to do is the following. Here's my sons. What I thought we would do to keep Bernie's light shining is write on the apron, "Thank you, Bernie and Billy." And just have people, I don't know if it's allowed, but if it is, and this answers the question, and I'll do it. By the way, I brought pens for people with the aprons to do it. This is my daughter-in-law's, Katie's apron. I know when I go to my Home Depot, I look at the apron, and often I have badges, but often the people will say personal things on that apron. And I just think that the way we keep everything about him and his focus on the working people of Home Depot and his focus on all the things he did in his life, that the way we keep his eternal light going is that somebody will come into Home Depot and see written, "Thank you, Bernie and Billy," and maybe not know who that was, or maybe have the opportunity to talk about him and all the things that he accomplished. So I want to say, and I'll do this afterwards, I won't do it now, but I will write it on these two. "Thank you, Bernie and Billy. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Bernie. Rest in peace." Thank you.
The interment will follow this memorial service at Arlington Memorial Park in Sandy Springs. For members of the family and close personal friends, if you're joining us at the cemetery, please turn on both your headlights and your flasher lights so that the police can escort us to the cemetery. Family will be gathering tonight for Shiva so that the community can pay respects. The Shiva Minyan, the service, will begin promptly at 6:30 p.m. sharp, either in the chapel or the sanctuary, with an opportunity to share stories and memories. Food will be served after the service in Schwartz Goldstein Hall. Please try to arrive by 6:30 if you're joining us for the service. As a reminder, Billy Marcus very much appreciates your greetings and your condolences and looks forward to greeting you throughout the day. Please refrain from hugs and from kisses. We turn now to the El Malay Rachamim Memorial Prayer as together we rise.
והשכינה עם קרשים ותורים כזוהר הרקיעים הזהירים נשמעת בן ציון בן אלימלך ושרה רבקה שהלך לעולמו בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Bernie Marcus, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Thank you so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to process now up to Arlington. Thank you all.
Pallbearers. We invite the pallbearers to please step forward at this time. The pallbearers. My joke wasn't about you. It was just about 3 hours. No, I realized that. Thank you. You're beautiful.
Thank you for what I was trying to do is